So we will go ahead and get started promptly. I want to welcome you to our final live webinar in the Spring 2025 webinar series brought to you by the Social Presence Literacy Lab and the Center for Innovation in Research and Teaching here at Grand Canyon University. So throughout this series, we've explored the evolving landscape of education and its critical role in social presence and how social presence plays in strengthening human connections, especially as AI becomes more embedded in teaching and learning. So today, as we close out these live sessions, we'll jump into our human-centered teaching in an AI-driven world, examining key challenges, practical strategies, and how we can ensure that technology enhances rather than replaces the essential human elements of education. So let's go ahead and get started. So we have our agenda for today. We're going to look at the AI surge, the trap of the new. We'll take a look at social presence and human-centered teaching. We'll look at challenges of human-centered teaching, the rise of AI and the need for human-centered teaching, and a practical framework for human-centered teaching. So if you haven't guessed yet, we'll be looking at human-centered teaching today. All right. So we are now on our final live webinar here for April. We have January, February, and March that are recorded that you can go back and watch if you've missed any of the webinars. So you have a link there on your screen, or you can use the QR code. So those links will take you directly to each of those webinars from January, February, and March recordings. And then in the next few days, the April recording will be up. And then we'll have one final May pre-recorded webinar that will do an email blast to everyone sometime in May. All right. Want to just redirect you to the Social Presence Literacy Lab. I'm not going to spend too much time, really much time at all on the lab. I've done a lot of that over the last few webinars. So what we'd like to do is just remind you that there are so many resources in the Social Presence Literacy Lab. We talk about the SPL framework, which we have covered in these previous webinars, all the programs and resources. So we have a ton of videos you can take a look at. There's our discussion forum. So there will be a specific discussion question for this webinar that's already up. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And just the different ways that you can get involved in the Social Presence Literacy Lab. So you can use that link there on the screen. That should work just fine for you. But if you go into CERT, you will see right on the home page, there's a link to the Social Presence Literacy Lab. All right, so we're going to have a little fun before we jump into some more of the serious information we'll cover today. So I want to welcome everyone to today's Jeopardy style challenge, human versus AI. So we're going to put your AI detection skills to the test with a fun game that will have you questioning what's human, what's artificial, and just how well AI can imitate wisdom. So this game show hosted by our friend Thunder. And so here's how the game works. We have 7 categories on the board. Each category contains a quote, statement, or piece of wisdom about teaching, learning, and technology. So your job is to decide whether it was written by a human or generated by AI. Because of the limitations of this webinar, you will be assisted by our wonderful SPL2 fellow, Elizabeth Larson. All right, ready? Let's play. Elizabeth, please choose a category and how many points you'd like to play for.
Ooh, this is my time to shine. I will take famous last words for 800, please, Thunder.
All right, famous last words. Here is your quote. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Is that human or AI? Who said it?
Ooh, I'm going to phone a friend. In the Q&A, go ahead and drop what you think it was. Is this human or is this an AI quote? Jennifer says human. It looks like most of them say human. Lisa says Margaret Mead. We will go
Well,
with what is human.
all right. Well, the correct answer is human, and that quote is by Nelson Mandela, who's a political leader. All right, great job, everyone. All right, Elizabeth, now you get to choose another category and set of points.
Teaching truths for 400, please.
All right, teaching truths for 400. The art of teaching is the art of assisting discovery. Who said it?
Okay, I'm still gonna phone a friend. Go ahead and drop your guys' answers in the Q&A. It looks like human. We do have AI, which I'm leaning towards. So I'm going to say, what is AI?
Unfortunately, the answer is human. This quote, "The art of
No.
teaching is the art of assisting discovery," was written by Mark Van Doren, American poet and professor. All right, you get the chance to choose another category and another set of points.
Okay, well, since I just lost 400, I'm going to go for broke right now. The future of learning for 800.
All right, the future of learning for 800. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Who said it?
I am not too sure. I need some help here. It looks like we are saying human. Human. Jennifer says human. Veronica says AI, but most of the responses, Dulce says human. So we are going to go with what is human?
Ding, 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 correct. That is a quote by Alvin Toffler, futurist writer and social thinker. All right, let's give you one more category to choose and a set of points.
Let's do the student experience for 800.
All right, here's your quote. Students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Human or AI? Who said it?
Okay. I am looking to my phone of friends, and most of the responses are human. So we are going to go with what David said and Sandra said, and that would be what is human.
Correct. That is a human. John C. Maxwell, speaker and best-selling author. I'm going to let you pick one more category and one more set of points.
Hmm.
This is
Robot
your
versus
final Jeopardy.
Final Jeopardy. Oh, I'm really good at the first round of Jeopardy and sometimes double Jeopardy, but never Final Jeopardy. Robot versus human for 800, please.
All right, robots versus humans. Here's your quote. A successful teacher is one who adapts like an algorithm and learns from feedback. Who said it?
Okay, team, do not let me down now. This is Final Jeopardy. Right now, it looks like we're having some AI. Most of the responses are AI, so we are going to go with what is AI.
Ding, ding, ding. You got it. AI. That was Chat GPT generated. Excellent. Great work, everyone. Thanks for playing along.
Great job.
All right. Awesome job. Let's jump into our next slide. So we're going to look at the AI surge and human-centered teaching, do a little comparison analysis. As we know, AI is transforming education at an unprecedented pace, right? While this technology offers efficiency, personalization, it also raises several questions for us. So let's take a look at how AI has evolved in education alongside some of the major milestones in human-centered teaching to truly understand why we must strike a balance between technological innovation and human connection. So we're going to start over here in the 1920s and 1930s with the foundations of human-centered learning, which is Lev Vygotsky's social development theory. Vygotsky emphasized that learning is inherently social. His work laid the foundation for concepts like the zone of proximal development, the ZPD, which I'm going to assume most of everyone knows and has a pretty good grasp of. The zone of proximal development highlights the importance of interaction between teachers and students. It also reminds us that AI, no matter how advanced, cannot replicate those nuances of human-centered relationships and learning. Then, when we moved into 1956, we see Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy. So, Bloom developed this hierarchy of learning objectives. I'm sure most of you, especially our College of Education folks, know a great deal about Bloom's taxonomy, stressing the higher order thinking skills like analysis, evaluation, and creation. Um, Again, like AI, it can assist in lower order tasks like recall, but the deep critical thinking that Bloom's requires um, really needs that human facilitation. So let's jump over to, we'll look at through the 1990s and 2000s. We'll look at the AI surge. So the rise of digital learning and early AI integration. So we started to see early learning management systems in the 90s. Platforms like Blackboard and Moodle emerged, marking the shift toward digital education. So this was the first step in automating certain aspects of instruction, paving the way for AI-driven platforms that we see today. So the early plagiarism detection softwares like Turnitin was founded in 1997, things we still use now that are even more dependent on AI. In 2011, we saw IBM's Watson demonstrate how AI potential in learning, the Jeopardy Win platform, and then when we go back to humanness of teaching, we start to look back in the 2000s with the community of inquiry framework, which a lot of what we've discussed over the last few weeks has been based on. Social presence comes out of the COI framework. So this was developed in 2001 by Garrison, Anderson, and Archer, emphasizing social, cognitive, and teaching presence in online learning. And this really underscores the importance of maintaining meaningful interactions, even in AI enhanced classrooms. In the 2010s, we saw the acceleration of AI in education. We've seen, again, like those things like IBM Watson, Carnegie's Learning Mathia started providing personalized support to students. We started looking at like adaptive learning platforms in the mid 2010s. Platforms like Newton and Smart Sparrow began personalizing content delivery. However, the teacher's role in interpreting student needs and fostering discussion was really crucial at that time. And then in 2020, the AI surge and the need for human-centered teaching and the rise above ChatGPT when that's launched in 2022. So we see that jumping in 2022. Everybody was like, "What are we doing now?" We we launched ChatGPT, sparking debates of what does this mean in the beginning, most people weren't even talking about education, just what does this mean for the world? And now, because we're all hyper focused on education, what is the launch of ChatGPT and now the dozens and dozens and dozens of other AI enhanced platforms mean for AI in education? The debate will continue, right? Um, we're seeing things in 2023 now, like AI generated grading and feedback tools. So AI can now assist in grading. I know that GCU is working on its own platforms for AI grading and its own ChatGPT infused AI chatbots. So what does 2024, 2025, and on look like? It's this call for human-centered teaching in an AI era, where educators now actively are discussing how do we preserve the human connection and learning. We know that AI can enhance, but not replace. So the essential aspects of mentorship, emotional intelligence, and real-world contextualization is going to be so important as we move through this AI-infused education landscape. So as AI continues to evolve, our role as educators must evolve with it. Uh, we, we have to have a healthy understanding. We can't fear AI. We must harness it. We must ensure that human presence is our ability to guide and mentor and inspire remains at the heart of teaching. And that's really what today's discussion is all about. So we know that AI is transforming educations in ways we just never imagined. I mean, I was trying to think, I use some form of AI probably every day now. I mean, I can't do a Google search without AI responding to me, whether I wanted to or not. It's built into everything. I was thinking to myself the other day, what life was like before AI. Like it has drastically changed the way that I do things, the way that we all do things. And so, we as AI transforms education, it's transforming our lives. But I, I want to continually to remind us that at the core of every meaningful learning experience is human connection. So the image on the slide here captures the contrast. On one side, we see AI attempting to replicate instruction. Yes, AI can It can help deliver content. It can analyze patterns. It can even adapt to student responses. But on the other side, we see an online educator fostering engagement, responding to emotions, creating a true sense of community. And this is the distinction that defines our responsibility as educators. We're not just transmitters of knowledge, right? We are mentors, we're guides, and we're the facilitators of deep transformative learning. And we do that through connection. This brings us to the concept of social presence, the ability to present oneself as a real person in a virtual environment, fostering that open communication, emotional expression, group cohesion. It's about ensuring that students don't just consume information, but that they actively engage, connect, and grow. As we know, social presence is rooted in that community of inquiry, the COI framework. It reminds us that meaningful learning happens at the intersection of the three vital presences: uh, cognitive, teaching, and social. So that cognitive presence, it fuels the critical thinking and knowledge construction, while teaching presence provides that structure and guidance. And social presence, well, that's my favorite, and that's the heart of the human connection. That's what breathes life into the learning experience, something that online learning truly needs. I think we can all agree with that. So, in an era increasingly shaped by AI, the COI framework should serve as a reminder that while technology can deliver content and automated tasks, it cannot replicate the trust, the rapport, and the motivation that emerge from authentic human relationships. Human-centered teaching is not just an optional add-on. We can't just check out. It's the foundation. It's what transforms the sterile digital environments into thriving learning communities. It's something we've been battling for years. It's not just since AI, but we've been fighting the how do we maintain humanness in an online learning world. So as we move forward, our challenge is not just to integrate AI in education, but to do so without losing what makes learning truly impactful, our human presence. AI can assist, but it cannot replace. I've probably said that a dozen times in the last few months. Um, our relationships, our empathy, and our mentorship, they define great teaching. So the future of education won't be defined what machines can do, but by what only humans dare to do: connect, inspire, and lead with the heart. So before we explore the heart of today's conversation, I want to pause and share this quote with you. This quote is by Patrick Lenciani. There is a cost to overemphasizing and overvaluing all things new. When we are in constant pursuit of acquiring more of the latest and greatest, we usually diminish or dilute the power of what we already have. So Patrick's a renowned business author, organizational health expert. He's known for his work on leadership, teamwork, and company culture, most notably in his book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. His insights often remind us that while innovation is important, it should never come at the expense of what's already working well. This quote is especially relevant today, in today's educational landscape. I actually saw this quote a few weeks ago, just randomly on LinkedIn, and I was like, yes, this really captures the way that I'm feeling at times. And I think a lot of my colleagues are feeling, where this rapid rise of AI tools is tempting us to overhaul everything in the name of progress. And listen, I love progress. I love, finding new things that will help our students, but I want to make sure those things that I find are not taking away from the good things I know that we already do as educators. And that's human-centered teaching. What we already know builds those strong learning communities. Those things remain essential. Those are the things we have to stick to. So yes, AI is a powerful tool, but it should enhance, not replace, the core strengths we bring to our classrooms. That presence, the empathy, the connection, and the responsiveness. These are the elements that make learning meaningful and memorable. So let's take a look at the trap of the new that I sort of framed this from Patrick's quote. So, with that quote in mind, let's unpack 6 common traps that we might fall into when chasing the new, and how we might reframe each one of these through the lens of social presence and sound pedagogy. So, we look at one, the new trap. Novelty, it can be a substitute for substance, right? It's easy to mistake something new for something better, but novelty doesn't automatically mean improved outcomes. When we adopt AI tools without anchoring them in research-based teaching, we risk replacing rich learning experiences with just what surface level practices, you know, just surface level engagement. The COI framework reminds us that cognitive presence is about sustained, meaningful learning, not fleeting gimmicks. So we must ask, does this tool or what I'm using this tool for, does it deepen the understanding or is it just adding flash? And we can do this with any type of technology tool. We should have been doing this for years, um, not just with AI. So when we look at number 2, diminished appreciation, we don't want to forget that the human is at the center. So, in our excitement for automation and efficiency, we might unintentionally sideline the relationships that matter most. Teaching presence is not just about content delivery, it's about intentional design and facilitation that makes students feel seen and supported. And then we add in that social presence aspect, which brings that warmth and empathy and connection into the learning space. Um, we can use AI to support this, but it cannot replace it. We must ask, how does this innovation amplify human connection rather than dilute it? One thing that I heard someone talk about recently is having the first draft approach that when they use AI to help them create something for their class, they never just copy and paste directly into the class. There's a first draft, a second draft, a third, the fourth. They're constantly going through and making sure that their voice is still in it, that they're going through a back and forth with AI. Number 3, the illusion of fulfillment. Sometimes we assume technology will fix everything. So there's a temptation to see AI as a solution to all our teaching challenges, grading, which all of us love, engagement, personalization. But again, technology is just that tool, right? It's not a strategy. So when overused or misapplied, it can widen the gaps instead of bridging them. So we need that pedagogical clarity. Uh, we want to make sure we choose the right tool, that it's serving the right goals, and the COI model really encourages us to keep intentionality at the heart of innovation. So let's look at number 4, the cycle of desire. Innovation without intention leads to constant chasing, more apps, more data, more tools. And sometimes these things have diminishing returns. So when we overlook the value of what already works, sometimes the best strategies are the ones we've been using all along. Thoughtful feedback, meaningful discussions, collaborative learning. These things, they aren't outdated, they're timeless. So when we rush to replace them, we may lose the wisdom of our own experience. And so that's at the heart of this is that, you know, because something's shiny and new doesn't mean it's better, right? And then let's look at number 5, focus on the present. Human-centered teaching asks us to slow down, notice, and invest in what's already meaningful, our students, our values, our impact. And sometimes if we don't focus on the present, if we're looking towards the future, burnout can happen, right? We can get this burnout from the constant change when we're chasing the new. It can be exhausting for faculty, for staff, for students. The cognitive load of constant change can overshadow the actual learning process, the human-centered approach. Our human-centered approach what truly acknowledges the importance of stability, reflection, and emotional well-being. So social presence means like honoring the people's limits and cultivating environments where trust and safety come first. In our design, we must ask, are we innovating for the sake of learning or just for the sake of change? And then finally, number 6, finding contentment. So real transformation in education isn't just about what's new, it's about how we deeply use what we already know and do well. Um, you know, disconnection in the name of progress, ironically, in our drive to connect through technology, we end up feeling less connected sometimes. When students interact more with the systems than they do with the people, isolation can grow. If we can rely heavily on using AI content to create feedback or to create discussion posts that go directly to our students, we may miss so many things because are we reading, are we understanding? You know, uh, it's just this, are we going into a form of isolation? And we need to remember that community and belonging are not just byproducts, they are essential to learning. The COI framework reminds us that group cohesion, collaboration, and emotional expression aren't extras, they're core. So we must build systems that elevate presence, not obscure it. So, what's the solution? Instead of constantly chasing after the new, we can cultivate a sense of gratitude for what we already have, focus, gratitude for what we already have, focus on what is already happening, and making the most of our current relationships and our experiences. We can also learn to appreciate the value of those relationships and experiences and find joy in the simple things in our classrooms. Because the future of education doesn't just depend on what's next, it depends on remembering what's essential. So, with that in mind, I'll now hand things over to Jacob, who will take us deeper into the practical strategies for maintaining human centered teaching in an AI driven world. Hey, Jacob, I don't know if anybody else can hear you, but I cannot hear you, and you're not
Uh,
muted. There
all
we
right.
go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep,
Can
can
you
hear
guys?
you now.
Yeah. Okay. All
Yep.
right. Sorry about that, everyone. Um, well, so I just wanted to say thank you, Tom, for going over all those traps. And so human-centered teaching is built around empathy, connection, and meaningful engagement. And if we reflect just on those traps, a lot of those core principles are weaved through those. When we consider all the innovation that we've experienced, and Tom just touched on those in our space, and in our space, since many of us have been teaching, remaining human-centered in our teaching requires us to use those innovations like AI and other ed tech tools as tools to enhance and not replace the human aspects of education. So when we consider the power of AI specifically has to gather and analyze student data, for example, we need to emphasize and prioritize privacy, fairness, and transparency because AI cannot truly replicate that human connection, the human connection that can we can use to that fosters empathy, collaboration, and develops a sense of belonging. That is where we bring our expertise to bear within our classrooms. And this is where social presence is needed. Our students are looking for us to be our real selves in our class and in our virtual spaces. Because even with AI powered tools or any other tool that we might be using that is supercharging and having an impact on our class, empathy must remain key because it is key to connecting with our students and humanizing our teaching. So we must be the ones who seek to understand students' emotional states, their motivations and challenges, and we are the ones that need to act on them. While AI can, and I'm sure many of us have experienced this, facilitate connections by identifying students who may be struggling or need extra support and create opportunities for peer collaboration and interaction, we need to understand and identify how human centered teaching goes beyond this. Because a human centered approach to teaching is more than just, and Tom touched on this, content delivery, and we want to explore that a little bit later on in the webinar. Human-centered teaching requires us to foster active learning through those things, those timeless things like discussions, projects, and problem solving. And this shows up through personalized feedback that encourages growth and reflection. When AI is used, we need to be sure it is to increase the amount of time that we can spend on those social and emotional needs of our students, like cultivating empathy, creating connection, and fostering that meaningful engagement. I really, that the trap of the new was excellent. And so in that trap of the new, Tom touched on that technology can certainly falls under that new trap and the cycle of desire. And AI and edtech tools are great, but how often do we see a rush to adopt them without taking time to understand their true value? Or we see them, and I've been guilty of this, implemented without the appropriate intention. So those things I just described, I mean, I'm standing up here, I'm raising my hand as the biggest offender of anyone in this session. But tech driven instruction focuses on using technology to deliver content and automated tasks. And while it can do great things by prioritizing efficiency and data analysis, it can also lead to neglecting the social emotional aspects of learning. And we know these are important for our students because it's not just the content that contributes to our students' learning, but it's the context that we provide and the relationships that we build and encourage to be built. The human centered approach flips the tech driven model on its head because it encourages us to use technology to support and enhance human interaction and connection. So think cognitive presence here because it prioritizes empathy, engagement, and meaningful learning experiences. It helps us recognize that technology is a tool and not a replacement for us as humans and as educators. And so, as we've talked about before, we need to see that the difference lies in the purpose or the intention. Is the technology being used to maximize the efficiency of information delivery, or is it being used to maximize the quality of the student's learning experience with the understanding that learning is a deeply human experience? So, teaching, as Lev Vygotsky or as Gene Mandernack said, is a fundamentally social experience or endeavor. So as educators, we must remain vigilant in ensuring that AI tools are used to augment and not diminish the human elements of our teaching. And so what does this look like? And what does this involve? So it's maintaining a focus and maintaining our focus on building relationships with our students and creating a supportive and inclusive learning environment and fostering critical thinking, creativity, and social emotional learning. So when we consider this, all this leads to, and I think Tom kind of was touching on this, that shift to leads to a shift in online education and the way that we approach it. And so I'm sure that there are people on this webinar who were able to attend the previous webinars or were able to catch the recordings on the CERT website. But for those of you who have not, amplification and intention are key elements of grounding our teaching approach in social presence. And I'm sure by this point, everyone there might be slight eye rolls at those words. But when we use amplification and intention in our teaching approach and in social presence, we are able to personalize our learner's experience, keep our teaching experience fresh, and cultivate empathy and implement strategies that remain human-centered in this new age of AI and all the other edtech tools that we are using and that are constantly coming at us. Traditional education and online education as well. I mean, a lot of us, I see the list, and a lot of us, we've been doing this for a long time. Was centered on mirroring the traditional setting with that static content delivery. So, we know the lectures that I'm sure many of us can recall from our undergrad, and videos. And it was based on the limited interaction and personalized feedback. Now we see the need to shift online education. And this is where we can use social presence to ensure our teaching has that human-centered approach that we're talking about and that our students have a student-centered experience. So we're putting our students at the center of the educational experience and emphasizing active learning, critical thinking, and problem solving. And we're going to bring out the COI framework here and the social, cognitive, and teaching elements that social presence is based on. This gives us, as teachers, the opportunity to leverage our expertise. You guys are the experts and focus on helping students to develop the skills and competencies and not just memorize facts. This is going to ask of us to become the facilitator and guide. So we've moved from away from being, and I'm sure this is a phrase that everyone's heard before, the sage on the stage. to becoming facilitators of learning. So we are now we're now guiding our students through the learning process, and we're providing that support and encouragement that they need and that they're hungry for. Social presence in human-centered teaching calls us to highlight our experience and expertise and to design engaging activities to create those opportunities for collaboration between us and our students, as well as opening up opportunities between our students and themselves. We need to become personalized learning designers. So we need to look for opportunities to create personalized learning experiences for our students. AI and other ed tech tools can help with this certainly, but that always must complement and not supplant. We analyze the data to identify student needs and tailor our instruction accordingly. We may use AI to develop feedback or content, but again, we are the ones who are taking a look at it. We're the ones to personalize it. I like what Tom just mentioned, that the kind of the first draft, second draft, third draft approach. We must become community builders. In a human-centered approach to teaching, we must foster a sense of community and look for that opportunity to foster that sense of community and belonging in our virtual learning environments. And this goes back to looking for that opportunity to become our real selves and to show our real selves in our space. We create opportunities for our students to connect with each other and build relationships. So, again, we bring in social presence to create the supportive and inclusive learning environment. We must be ethical and, where necessary, AI literacy advocates, because it falls upon us to help our students navigate the ethical implications of AI. We help students develop AI literacy, which includes understanding how AI works, how to use it responsibly. So they understand how to discern accurate information from AI generated information. I think a key word there is always wisdom. We want to move beyond knowledge and move towards wisdom. Data interpreter and learning analyst. So, again, we have plenty of tools, especially now with AI, that generate vast amounts of data about student learning, but it's us. We still must be the ones that are looking at this data and interpreting it to really understand our students' progress and look and identify areas for their improvement as well as for ours. You know, and then we can use this data to inform our teaching practices, but not allow it to dictate them. So teaching is a social endeavor, and as we have covered during our webinar series, and as I've said, I'm sure you probably are sick of it by this point, it's a zero-sum game. So this is important when we consider how we can personalize our classrooms, cultivate empathy, or look to incorporate human-centered teaching strategies, because time spent doing one thing means less time to do another. So here at GCU, we have a subcommittee that discusses recent developments in AI. We review new tools, strategies, and considerations related to AI's place in higher education. And one of our colleagues, I think I've mentioned her in the last webinar, but I'd like to shout her out again, Jennifer Pellish. I mean, obviously, this discussion had a significant impact on me. But she gave a little mini talk or presentation during one of our recent meetings about AI addiction. And during this meeting, she brought up the topic of vulnerable groups and pointed out that our students, adult learners with various full-time responsibilities, are particularly vulnerable to some of the temptations that exist with inappropriate AI use. And whether that be using AI to try to generate work to turn in, or just relying too heavily on AI to get ideas and to just do things, to get maybe some things done when it might not necessarily be needed. But the reason I bring this up is to say that I think as online faculty, we can be a vulnerable group to falling away from the human-centered approach to teaching. And this is why Tom started the Social Presence Literacy Lab and proposed this webinar series. And I'd like to address some of the specific challenges that we face before jumping into the practical framework for human-centered teaching approach. I do believe it's important to put our cards on the table and acknowledge some of the challenges that are inherent in human-centered teaching, because humanity is complex, and so is putting it at the center of our teaching. In general, it's been my experience anyway. I think that, if we don't take the time to recognize and acknowledge our challenges or challenges that exist, then we'll be tempted to despise them. And then when we despise them, we get stuck in this cycle where we're just there. We don't move. We make no progress. Humanity is complex and nuanced, and so are our students, and it's hard to keep students motivated online. So without that social environment of a physical classroom, and this I think reminds me of getting started with working with Tom and Elizabeth on the idea of proximity. But online learning, Tom mentioned it, it's isolating, especially for our students. They can lack support. There's the absence of face-to-face interactions. There can be these feelings of loneliness and disconnection. And we also need to consider, the role that AI plays in that, our use of AI, how edtech tools can contribute to that, especially when they're not used uh, appropriately or effectively, and how it's also difficult for us at times to monitor or gauge our students' engagement, or sometimes to identify students who might be struggling. And this can really impact our ability to infuse that human-centered approach that we're looking to do. Because even if you're using AI to maybe monitor, or any other edtech tool to monitor some the engagement metrics, I mean, that can be helpful, but that's not always going to tell us the whole story. The constant influx of information can lead to cognitive overload, and decreased engagement for our students, but for us as well. So we need to be aware of how we're showing up for our students, and then we also want to be aware of the technical issues and course concepts, the technical issues that students face, as well as the fact that they're dealing with issues asynchronously at times, and how that can impact them. There are challenges that we must overcome as well, that I think are unique to our circumstances. So, we're dealing right now at times with an over reliance on automated tools, which can include AI, but other tools that we're using. So over reliance can lead to a lack of understanding on how they can work, how AI tools can work, potentially creating a black box where we don't fully grasp how those tools and the data drive them, might be impacting our learning experience, or the learning experience of our student. And this ultimately results in a loss of control over the learning process, and diminishes our ability to provide that personalized support. This leads to depersonalization, because when we automate feedback or grading or content delivery without taking that time to personalize it, or to tailor it to our students or to ourselves and our personalities, we reduce the human connection between us and our students. And this can weigh heavily on our students, but also on us as well. We want our classes to be a vibrant space, and I think we can all feel it. We all feel it. We know when we miss the mark, and I know that weighs on us, and we can see it. We know it when we see that comment come across in our EOCs. And so we know our students want to know that they're interacting with a person. We can lose that pedagogical control. When we rely too heavily on AI or any other tool, it can lead to that shift in the pedagogical control from us to the technology that we're using. And this can cause us to find ourselves adapting our teaching to fit the limitations of the tool, rather than using the tool to enhance our teaching. Remember earlier, we said that our tools like AI should enhance our teaching strategies, not dictate them. Social presence is about being our real self in a virtual space, and when we rely too heavily on automated tools, we lose out on the human element, and are unable to maintain authenticity. The impetus for the webinar series is the increased role of AI in higher ed, and it presents faculty with a complex set of challenges, particularly concerning literacy and maintaining a human-centered approach to teaching. So here's some of the key challenges to their impact to consider. So a lack of training and expertise. Many of us lack formal training in AI, making it difficult to understand its capabilities and limitations, and this can lead to hesitancy in adopting AI tools or misusing them. And as Tom mentioned, AI is powerful. We need to not, and it's a useful tool. We need to not be afraid. Rapid technological advancements. AI is evolving rapidly, requiring us to engage in continuous learning to stay updated. And this constant need for upskilling can be time consuming, and can leave us feeling overwhelmed. And we're often finding ourselves grappling with the ethical concerns. We initially had this thought of, what does AI mean for us as in the world, and now we're trying to deal with, what does it mean for us in education? What does it look like? How are we using it ethically? How are our students going to use it ethically? There's the data privacy concerns. How are our students using it? How are academic integrity, AI generated content, and then integrating AI into pedagogy? Because it can be a struggle to effectively integrate AI tools into our teaching practices in a way that, again, enhances learning rather than detracts from it, and because this requires rethinking traditional pedagogical approaches. Although there are challenges that we face with human-centered teaching, we all see its value. Our students have unique needs that social presence helps us meet and that we can address via human-centered teaching strategies. Because human-centered teaching values their experiences, our students' experiences. It promotes autonomy and connects learning to real-world applications, which we know is so important for our students, especially. And when we acknowledge the many hats our students are wearing, we have the opportunity through our teaching to recognize the wealth of life experiences that they bring to the learning environment. Human centered approaches acknowledge and incorporate these experiences, making learning more meaningful and relevant. And social presence facilitates this by allowing us to relate art to our students and share our perspectives and connect over similar experiences. Human centered teaching identifies the intrinsic factors that motivate our students, like their personal growth and their professional development, and then it fosters that self direction by giving them control over their learning paths and providing them opportunities for reflection. Social presence increases motivation by creating a feeling of accountability to their peers, providing that supportive network, and helps reduce those feelings of isolation to create that sense of connection that we're really looking for. Because when our students feel connected and supported, they're going to feel engaged in the learning process. And this is going to lead to those improved outcomes, that positive learning experience, and greater success and satisfaction. So I'd like to turn it over really quick to Elizabeth for a quick discussion break before we go into the practical framework for human-centered teaching.
Hi, everybody. It's time for a brain break, and I love breaks, especially this one because it's tied to our discussion in the social presence literacy lab for this month. And so I want everyone to take a moment and kind of reflect on when was a moment that you had a human-centered approach that really made a difference in your classroom. And this can be at the macro level or it can be at the micro level. So meaning your whole class or maybe just with one student. And then what is one unique quality that you bring to your teaching that AI cannot replicate? Because remember, AI can mimic, but it cannot replicate what you do in the classroom. So I want everyone to share your examples, drop it in the Q&A, and please, your examples are wonderful, and I would really like to get this out to other faculty members. So I have the QR code posted for the discussion board. I'm also going to drop a link to our discussion board in the chat. Please share your responses to that, your responses to the discussion board as well, because you guys have some really great ideas and I would love to share them out with other faculty. Anybody want to share? Oh, Austin says in my communication class, we did a whole lesson on nonverbal communications without speaking a word. Awesome lesson where AI was absent, and that is very true. Nonverbal communication is so important. I think especially communication in the digital classroom, I try to be intentional with effective expression. I try to really show emotion in my written communication to students. Alyssa says AI cannot offer empathy or understand historical background, cultural background context. That is so important as well. Andrea says, I know that it may sound silly, but I once had a student tell me that they felt seen because I knew their name and used their name during the class. And that is so important. Personalization really makes a student feel seen. And I think in the digital classroom, sometimes it can feel anonymous. And so if we take that time to connect with students, we take the time to learn more about them and to use their name, even if it's just in their feedback or we're sending a message, it really helps build that connection. These are really great answers. I hope everyone is able to post their responses to our SPL2 discussion board. Paula says, when I use Zoom for us to meet as a class and talk about their practical projects. Anthony said, for question 1, the human impact is when students provide feedback to the faculty member. And I think That's a really good point. When you get the feedback from students, when you get unsolicited feedback from students who are saying like, hey, you did such a great job. I really appreciate everything you did for me. That tells you that what you're doing matters, that the student felt seen. And it's so important. Those unsolicited comments from students, that unsolicited feedback really kind of helps give us validation that having that human-centered approach really makes an impact. A couple other ones in microbiology, it's great when we include our discussion, our own experiences with various disease and healthcare, and this makes us immediately all humans, and the conversation really opens up and becomes human and seen, and this helps when we're learning about microbiome. Erin, that is such a great point. I think as teachers, it is important to share our own experiences when we're connecting to the content, or even just when we're trying to connect with students. Sharing our experiences, sharing our life really helps bring that, humanizes the teaching and brings us into the classroom. I'm going to just share a couple more and then we'll get back to the framework because we only have a few minutes left. But Susan says in the current psychology coaching class, helped an older student who's struggling with some of the Canva assignments, personal outreach to her several times and walked her through it as well, giving loads of encouragement for her efforts. That is so great. When we try to work with students and we take the time to really help them with a tough project or help them with an assignment, it brings that human-centered teaching. It helps the student understand like, hey, my teacher cares so much about me that they're actually taking the time to go ahead and help me with this assignment. So these are really great answers. And I'm going to, oh, Tom already had posted in the chat the link to the discussion board. So please, please, please post your guys' responses there because I think some of this other faculty need to know. Share your ideas, share your guys' tips and trips because they're really great. Back to you, Jacob.
Thank you, E. Yes, everybody, please take those, copy and paste those responses, and please take those over to our discussion board in the SPL2 lab. We'd love to get a discussion even outside of what we have going on here. There were some great responses there. But let's jump into the practical frameworks. So this is the final live webinar in our spring series, and with each session, we sought to give you that practical framework with which to move forward. So everyone here brings years of experience and, more importantly, skill and expertise to your classroom. So when you put the frames of our framework we've shared with you around your teaching, we hope you've been able to take away a fresh perspective and some new strategies and ideas. We do like to take a three-pronged approach to just about everything we do around here. However, in this instance, a four-step approach felt more appropriate. Sometimes with all we have going on, we can feel like we have trouble keeping up. So my hope is that these strategies will help everyone keep pace with the changing landscape of our virtual spaces. Human-centered teaching comes to life, no pun intended, when we focus on personalization, authenticity, community, and empathy. Now, I realize there's some overlap here, but I believe that's a positive. And there's some purpose behind it. This because we want to be sure there's some connective tissue between what we've covered in the past. All right. Social presence is our lifeline to fostering connection in virtual spaces. And one of the ways we can do this is through personalization, the first step in our practical framework for human-centered teaching strategies. Now, if we refer back to the COI framework of social presence, we can look at personalization as part of our quote unquote teaching presence. It helps us address some of the challenges that are inherent in virtual spaces that lack that physical proximity. When we look at our teaching presence, it involves design, facilitation, and the direction of cognitive and social processes to achieve educational outcomes. So, unlike face to face settings, online learning can sometimes feel impersonal or, as we've said over and over again, isolating. But it's important. A personalized approach is going to help you or help us bridge that gap because we're going to be acknowledging students as individuals with unique backgrounds, learning styles, and needs. So adaptive assignments can really help you personalize classroom experience for your students. So here we have the opportunity to implement tools that adjust assignment difficulty based on students' performance. Now, I know for a lot of us, the assignments are already something that are set in stone. They're already created for us. So we don't have a lot of latitude for changing those. So this might include using quizzes or other maybe formative assessments. So for example, if one of our students scores below a certain threshold on a quiz or a basic concept within our class, we might be able to craft content or provide them with a supplemental resource and a practice problem before moving on to a more advanced concept. And here's a great place where we can harness AI powered learning platforms to track progress or provide tailored challenges. Think Khan Academy, quizzes, school AI. Tailored feedback. Now is the time for us to move beyond that generic feedback, beyond that canned substantive post or feedback comment. It can be easy for us to get caught in providing stock feedback, especially if we've got that nice substantive comment. I've got to say it, teaching is a zero sum game. And I know class management can be a tricky prospect, but that feedback is that great place to really add that personalization that's going to enhance the connection and cut down on that isolation for our students. Provide that specific, actionable, and personalized feedback that's going to address the individual strengths and weaknesses. Here, consider utilizing audio or video feedback to convey tone and build rapport. We've got great tools, Loom, Screencast-O-Matic. There's a Mote Chrome extension that might cost, and there's Notebook LM, which is free if you've got a Google account. Flexible learning paths can demonstrate connection to our students. So again, I know we're a little, for a lot of us, the flexibility, we've got to be creative. But here we can personalize the experience for our students by offering them a choice in how they engage with course materials and complete assignments. This could include multiple formats for content delivery, text, video, audio, varied assignment options, or varied ways to interact with the material like presentations or self-paced options. Again, school AI, different options there. Data-driven customization. So really using learning analytics to identify individual student needs and adjust course content or support accordingly. For example, if we have students consistently struggling with a particular concept, that's a great time to provide supplemental resources or consider one-on-one support. Be willing to look at content or activities and remove or adapt them based on interaction that they have that they may be having. So I know I struggle with this because I enjoy all the custom content that I create. I have a connection to it. I spend a lot of time creating it and I like the way it looks in the classroom. But we've got to be open. I've got to look at it. And my analytics can just be are people interacting with it? Are students interacting with it? Are they getting anything out of it? Is it adding value? Do I need to change it? Do I need to remove it? And being open to that personalization. So as Tom mentioned, the Koi framework, which social presence comes from, developed by Garrison Anderson and Archer back in 2000, is built on those three independent elements: social presence, cognitive presence, and I believe we're addressing the teaching presence specifically with authenticity here. Storytelling is a great way for us to build authenticity, presence, and trust. We can use storytelling to connect with students on a human level and make our course content more relatable. Our students need that. They want that. Share your personal experiences, incorporate case studies or real world examples that illustrate key concepts. So I mentioned this earlier, but instructor videos. Those offer us a great way to do this. Be creative. Infuse your course regularly with short, engaging video content that showcases your personality and, very importantly, your expertise. Be willing, be open, share those personal anecdotes. Give the students a peek behind the curtain, behind the scenes, insights, genuine reflections on course materials. This is a hard one for me, and I know this is one that Tom has adopted, and I'm working on it. Consider being a one-take video recorder. I need to get better at this. But the Tom's philosophy behind this is, we don't get a second take in a physical classroom. And, for our students, polish is not always the answer. So personal engagement through actively participating in online discussions. Again, the discussions, that's timeless. Respond to student messages promptly and thoughtfully. Consider hosting virtual office hours or maybe a live Q&A session. Zoom is a great tool for this. Use informal language and conversational tone to create welcoming and an approachable atmosphere. Be vulnerable and transparent. Share your own learning process. Include challenges and mistakes. A lot of us got our degrees, secondary degrees in online, the same way our students are getting their degree. We have a lot of relatable stories. Sharing this can demonstrate that you're a fellow learner and will foster a sense of shared experience. What was your experience during your program? What were some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome those? Consider discussing topics that are, more relatable, specific, and actionable with your students. The next part of our framework explores the strategies aimed at cultivating a sense of community within our classrooms. Community is a key component of the social presence and human-centered teaching. We have discussed in our interaction in we have discussed our interaction in discussion, and that is important. But for a sense of community, we must work on fostering peer discussion as well, because that's important. So now again, if we refer back to Coy, think the cognitive presence here, or rather the extent to which our learners are able to construct meaning through sustained communication. Because here we want to craft prompts that require students to apply course concepts, share personal experiences that relate to those concepts, and then to respond to each other's ideas. Because all this is going to foster that important critical thought and help them to problem solve. Community is where we as teachers really need to put the emphasis and be outward facing and look for opportunities for group activities. So I realize for us and a lot of us here, especially for those of us using Halo, I realize can be challenging, and it can be challenging for anybody depending on the LMS that we're using. But this is a great opportunity to be creative. So consider peer review assignments that promote teamwork and social learning. Might you be able to incorporate a shared document, a virtual whiteboard or video conferencing platforms? So again, Zoom, Microsoft Teams. Another area here is your accessibility, because that's important. So I discussed in authenticity the benefits of using video office hours to build trust and rapport, but here we can take it a little bit further by sharing our schedule and allowing students to schedule meetings with us when it works for them. So, I talked a little bit about autonomy, giving them autonomy. So maybe using Microsoft Bookings or Calendly and opening up a window and giving them a chance to schedule that, because this is going to help us maintain a visible and accessible presence in our classroom. So finally, let's look for opportunities to create social learning spaces. And it's not going to be feasible for us to create online spaces for informal interactions like virtual coffee breaks or special social forums, but there are other ways to adapt to this. I mean, we could create a forum in our LMS to allow students to connect on a more social level, like add maybe a prayer forum or give a forum that would allow students to seek advice from each other. Or we could consider creating posts within the forums that allow students to share more personal sides of themselves, because this would help students connect with each other on a more personal level and work towards building that sense of community. So in our March webinar, we took everyone through ideas, or perhaps invited is a more apt way to put it, on empathy and its importance in AI enhanced classrooms. Here it shows up again as a part of our practical framework in helping us use social presence to maintain human-centered teaching. Be open and offer flexibility. This will look different for everyone. It's not a one size fits all, but be open to it. Consider flexible deadlines or alternative deadlines to accommodate students with diverse needs and circumstances. Keep in mind that being an online student is hard. I don't think that empathy means that there's no accountability or no late policy. I think it just means acknowledgement. Being able to understand and recognize student struggles, acknowledging the challenges of online learning, demonstrating the understanding of students' personal circumstances. Be mindful of potential stressors such as time constraints, technology issues, and personal responsibilities. For our students, remember the time that they spend in class means that they've had to take time away from other important roles in their lives. I mean, that's just a fact. Their spouses, parents, employees, their employers. So supportive feedback. Make sure that we're providing constructive, encouraging feedback. Make sure that we're also focusing on their growth with their feedback, and that we're also using positive language. We're offering suggestions for improvement, because this is a big opportunity for us to connect with them and highlight skills that they're demonstrating. And this is a great opportunity for us, and we really need to remember this when we're grading them. And we can do this through video and audio grading. This is a great opportunity to build empathy there. Social presence is the degree to which we can connect with one another. And within our classrooms, it involves the expression of emotion, building trust, creating a sense of community, and guiding the learning experience. So, everyone, as we press forward, there are tremendous new opportunities that AI affords us. And with anything, the unknown can be intimidating. So, with social presence, there is AI literacy, meaning that there is an opportunity to expand our understanding with this skill. Social presence helps us balance AI use to ensure that our teaching remains human centered and personal, and that we can cultivate empathy, that we can keep pace with the challenging educational landscape. I know that I ran over and I apologize, but I just want to take a time to say that the foundation of this webinar series really, has been um, the work started by Tom Dyer on the social presence, and that he continued in the social presence literacy lab. And I just want to highlight there are a variety of resources available there for you to browse, along with ongoing discussions on social presence, how to implement it, best practices, and other edtech tools that can complement and supplement social presence practices. So please join the discussion with us there. And then here's just a recap of our Spring 2025 series. February, we explored AI as a tool for connection and personalizing interactions in online teaching. We explored strategies to enhance personalization while maintaining authentic relationships. In March, we discussed cultivating empathy in AI enhanced classrooms, and explored methods for fostering empathy. And then and again, just a plug, we will end our webinar series with that pre-recorded video in May, which will be led by our wonderful Elizabeth Larson, and she'll be going over decision making for AI integration, and in that she's going to be exploring a framework for human connection. And that session will be presenting a practical 5-step framework to ensure that AI complements relational teaching dynamics. And, with these sessions, our hope was to empower you, or is to empower you rather, to navigate the complexities that we know exist in modern education while still keeping the human connection at the forefront. So, thank you all for joining us. And, we look forward to our continued journey together. And just as a quick reminder, again, all those past webinars with our along with our May pre-recorded video will be available on the CERT website. So, it's with tremendous gratitude that we want to thank you for joining us on this webinar. We've got the link to the Social Presence Literacy Lab. You can use the link or the QR code to get there. And once there, just be sure to log in and you can get full access to all the resources. And most importantly, please join in with the discussion. And here is the QR code you may use to record your attendance. We'll drop the link into the chat and QA as well. And I mean, if anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Tom, Elizabeth, or myself. We'd be happy to address any questions and really to work with you in any way. And we hope to see you guys hope to see everyone in the discussion in the Social Presence Literacy Lab. Thank you, everyone.